It's 4 a.m. The hours of sleep are over. Every wagon and tent is pouring forth its night's tenants, and slow kindling smoke begins to rise. Jesse Applegate, 1843.
1843. John Tyler was president, the 10th man to hold that office. The population of the United States had just passed 18 million. America was in a deep depression. Asian cholera had killed thousands. Many were looking for a chance to start over. In Congress, the theme was Manifest Destiny, and free Western land was the bait. To the debt-ridden populace, the lure of free land proved irresistible. It fueled their dreams, and they envisioned a land of milk and honey. But getting there was a nightmare as they traveled the twisted ruts of the Trail of Dreams. The first wagon train to make it all the way to Oregon left Independence, Missouri in the spring of 1843. These first overlanders cut and chiseled a road across the frontier and reached Fort Vancouver on the Columbia River that fall. The wagon road to Oregon was open, and the Great Migration was on. It was a migration built on the dreams of over 350,000 men, women, and children who would travel the trail in the next 25 years.
They were dreaming about a better life. They were dreaming about freedom, being totally free of a political system. They were dreaming about being a part of a new land.
We left our comparatively comfortable homes and the uncomfortable creditors for the uncertain and dangerous trip, beyond which loomed up in our mind's eyes castles of shining gold. Catherine Hahn, 1849.
2,000 miles in a covered wagon was an incredible journey. Making a wagon and livestock that would last that long, that would survive that kind of a journey. It's almost unbelievable to think about.
Since few Americans had ever been west, most immigrants relied on guidebooks to prepare for the journey.
In procuring supplies for this journey, the immigrant should provide himself with at least 200 pounds of flour or meal, 150 pounds of bacon, 10 pounds of coffee, 20 pounds of sugar, and 10 pounds of salt. These provisions are considered ample both as to quantity and variety. For the harness, mules are preferred to horses, but oxen are preferred to both. For as a general thing, they continue to thrive throughout the journey. Lansford W. Hastings, The Emigrant's Guide, 1845.
Unfortunately for the pioneers, The Immigrant's Guide, like most guidebooks, was carelessly researched and hastily published. They didn't give a true picture of how hard the trek across the frontier really was.
If these people had had any idea of what they were going to face, I don't think they would have left.
They left from Independence, St. Joseph, and Council Bluffs, the jumping-off places, towns where the pioneers left the states and jumped off into the vast and largely uncivilized frontier.
Arose early at 3 o'clock, started before 6, traveled about 11 miles, struck river at 2 o'clock for dinner, remained 1 hour, started again, traveled 8 miles, encamped for the night. Sarah Mousley, 1857.
At Fort Kearny, all three trails join nature's highway along the South Platte River, a trail blazed long before by the Indian, the elk, and the buffalo.
We are now on the big road, and such a road I never met. It's from 20 to 60 feet wide and as hard and smooth as a pavement. Road full of teams, a perfect jam. Henry S. Bloom, 1850.
The main part of the Oregon Trail itself was several hundred yards wide, in some places miles wide, as the trains moved away from each other to try and find forage for their teams or just get out of the dust of the train ahead of you.
We have a rather tedious day's ride, passing over some rough roads. And the dust blew hard enough to put our eyes out. Charlotte Alice, 1854.
This day's march brought us memories of the joys of the past, spent around our firesides at home by the cold, disagreeable wind and dust blew in our eyes during the march. Judge William Riley Franklin, 1849.
I've just washed the dust out of my eyes so I could see to get supper. Amelia Knight, 1853.
The spring rains settled the dust, but brought another type of misery.
I've been traveling all afternoon in mud and water up to our hubs. Broke chains and stuck in the mud several times. Men and boys are all wet and muddy. The wind so high I thought it would tear the wagon to pieces. Unable to pitch the tent, so all 9 of us crowded into the wagon with wet clothes, wet beds, and no supper. Amelia Knight.
And rain pouring down in torrents. Horrible are these storms when you have nothing but a little frail tent. Yes, our tent blew down. Such a time I never experienced before. But I expect we have not seen the worst yet. Charlotte Alice, 1854.
The main danger they faced, of course, was disease, and that was cholera. Cholera was the worst of the diseases on the trail.
Death came fast to those that caught cholera. The disease spread rapidly in the unsanitary conditions of the campsites along the trail.
We've passed by some 8 or 10 graves today whose deaths caused by cholera and diarrhea. Every day's march present the same striking lesson to our view, and sensations very melancholy steal over our mortal frames when we reflect upon them being deposited so far from home in a dreary, wild, desolate solitude where the wolf howled their regime. Our bosom heaves with pity for humanity. Judge William Riley Franklin, 1849.
But in spite of the hardships, they were forced to move quickly before their livestock and wagons wore out.
They traveled anywhere from 15 to 20 miles a day, and they had to complete their journey before the snows closed the passes on either the Sierras or the Blue Mountains out in Oregon. They didn't watch a clock, but they watched the calendar.
The animals lived and died on the amount of feed found along the way, and the lead wagon trains had the advantage.